Welcome to No Quit, the podcast where real business isn't filtered. I'm Jeff Leschere, founder of Fleur de Lis Law and Title. I've built an 8-figure company, but not without setbacks, burnouts, and moments that nearly broke me. This podcast is where I tell the truth about what it really takes to grow something that lasts. The wins, the losses, and the grit in between. If you're in it for more than just the highlight reel, you're in the right place. The stories shared on this podcast are based on real experiences, but details have been changed or generalized to protect client confidentiality. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship. Welcome to another edition of the No Quit Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Leschere. Today, I am super excited about our guest. Most of us that are in the area have all grown up knowing this family, but we have Parker Layrisson today. So Parker, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Normally, I give everybody a quick second to kind of introduce themselves. In your case, I'd be a little bit concerned with that because you've had such a prolific life and career already, I feel like, in my opinion. So try to hit the highlights if you can quickly.
Well, nobody wants to hear about me. At best, I'm cool by association.
Oh, yeah.
I grew up being known as Eddie and Celeste's son, and then it was Bree's brother and Brandy's husband, and now it's Luke and James's dad. So as you know, I practiced law in Ponchatoula for now over 20 years. You know, we both get a little gray in our beards, and we've been at it a while.
The first 10 went slow. I think the second 10, man, blink of an eye.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with that 100%. But anyway, I help people who are injured in car and truck wrecks, so they can get well and get paid and get back to their life as normal.
Well, not to jump straight into that too, but a little bit what we're after is both the entrepreneurial side of some folks or getting over and through adversity, whether it's good or bad. But one thing I've always, I guess, kind of wondered is that you're the kind of guy, the injury attorney that really doesn't act like an injury attorney, right? I don't see any billboards. I don't see any crazy commercials. You don't have some weird slogan. Nobody's singing weird songs yet online with you. And so tell me what your thought process is there, because I just, I feel like it's so different. And you're still successful, so you don't need any of it.
I always tell everybody, never say never. All my kids' tuition isn't paid yet. So if you see me with a billboard, a commercial, a radio jingle, times are tough. But remember, Luke and James have to get to college somehow.
Sure.
So that's what that's about. But we've been blessed to just kind of build what I call a snowball referral-based practice. And what I mean by that is over the course of 20 years, starting with a few clients, now having a fair amount, it's just been word of mouth. Last year's happy client tells this year's prospective client about what we do. And eventually that turned into 600 5-star Google reviews at our 4 locations. And then you get a little bit of, kind of organic online action going with that. And it's been a real blessing, but it's all a testament to the fantastic clients that we've had that have become advocates for what we do and the process, and the great team that I have behind me. I mean, I've got some world-class lawyers and staff. Yeah. So it's not all about me, but we're very proud that we don't have to advertise the ways you described.
Well, I mean, I think too, it makes you, efficient, I guess, in terms of running a business. And I think too, it just, some of the guys I feel like go down that road, it's like once you started it, you can't really stop it, right?
Yeah, it's tough. And because whether you're doing real estate title closings and estate planning as you do, or injury law as I do, attorneys are in a trust game. We require intimate trust from our clients to prosper. And so I just feel like that type of tacky TV advertising, jingles and all this nonsense that we kind of grew up with and see that we're inundated with. Yeah. I think it undermines that attorney-client trust, I always say my model client is kind of a local soccer mom. Yeah. And, I can't reveal who those soccer moms have been over the years. Many of them. But they don't want that kind of nonsense, and they don't want to be associated with a brand,
I mean, it's just tough, though.
That kind of firm.
Part of the reason I'm doing, this now is a little bit of, FaceTime. People get to know me. It seems like, there's different aspects of how people think of you, I guess, but there's certainly a perspective out there that once you become successful, and I'm sure you see this in your practice as well, some people find you unapproachable. They think that you don't care or you can't relate. They forget about, the fact that we came from Ponchatoula,
right.
right? It's not like we came from, highfalutin Philadelphia lawyers and went to, private all boys boarding schools in the Northeast or something like that. Yeah. And so I think to some extent you've done well with your Ponchatoula Live for sure. And we'll touch back on that in a second.
Thank you. You were my 7th guest on my, my podcast. Yeah. So thanks for returning the favor.
Yeah. It took a while, but I'm just not as comfortable, I guess, in front of the camera. But two things I wanted to touch back on that you already said. One, you said something about, the process, and that's something that I find, you have spent a lot of time on, whether it be the process inside of your firm and how a case moves through, but also the marketing side of things. I can just remember when we were younger, no one read as many books and watched as many videos on how to develop this process. And I think that says a lot to your success. So kind of tell me about, that journey, I guess, through that, if you don't mind, because I think other guys have businesses out there, maybe don't know where to start, and you've been really successful with it.
Well, thank you. That was a very PC and polite way to call me out on what a nerd I am. I am an avid reader, a bookworm, and it's certainly been a big part of my practice. For me, I think the key is, and this goes back to a book, but ironically, a book that my mom gave me in college. I was home working for a summer, and I don't know, this was pretty heavy reading for an 18-year-old, but my mom gave me a book by Dr. Stephen R. Covey, called the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Mm-hmm. I think it was either 7 or 5. I may have my count wrong.
I think it's 7.
It's okay. But one of them just stuck with me to this day, which was begin with the end in mind. And, I guess what I'm getting at here is when you start with that process, and it's kind of like, people talk tactics, people talk strategy and how it should come before tactics. To me, begin with the end in mind is like, it's the citizenship question. Do I want to be fighting for America or Russia or China?
Yeah.
And from there, I don't ask, do I want to be a soldier or a sailor? I say, do I want to be a general or an admiral? What's the end going to look like so that I can design a path to get there? And so for me, when I went on this journey from small town lawyer to eventually personal injury specialist, and decided where I wanted to be when I was old and gray and bald and fat and happy as I am today, I put a lot of thought into that.
Yeah.
And what I realized was if I just followed the natural course of what other small town lawyers were doing around here, I wouldn't get there.
You'd have their result.
Yeah. And I looked around and there were so many of them that I admired because I grew up with, although my dad was not a lawyer, my mom was not a lawyer. So many of our family, close family, my dad's best friend in the world, Carl Cleveland, was an incredibly successful attorney in New Orleans. Tom Waterman was an avuncular figure in our family. It was like Uncle Tommy. Yeah. We would go on vacation with these people. We shared camps with these people. We did all this. But when I looked at their life, there were many things to admire. They were great fathers, great husbands, etc. But I didn't really love the look of their professional, dynamic at their firms. Ditto for all the other guys that I worked with. So I read a lot of books to see what else out there could possibly be better. Mm-hmm. And then I took some big gambles, like you and I both have talked many times over the years.
Sure.
The importance of becoming a specialist. Mm-hmm. This is something I feel like doctors got right decades ago. Yep. And nowadays, if you need knee surgery, you would never go to your cardiologist. That's right. You would not go to your family doctor. You would go to, you've had to go there, right? Like, sadly, I don't hate to bring bad things up, but but like my brother Louis, when he needed knee surgery, he said, "Who's doing the knees for the LSU Tigers?"
Correct.
I want him. He got Dr. Bankston. When my mom needed shoulder surgery, who's doing shoulders for the Saints? Dr. Savoy in New Orleans. So lawyers haven't always figured that out. Yeah. So, for me, it was about, hey, how can I become a specialist? And then how do specialists market their practices? How do they, interact with other specialties? And
I think that's
a lot of hits and misses, but that's kind of, if you're asking about the approach, that was the big picture.
And that's exactly where I was hoping you would go. And that, you kind of started with that sort of book. I think a lot of people watching, what I'm hoping they get out of this is a starting point, a little bit of a blueprint, and I think what you said there, it works two ways. I mean, there are certainly the analytical folks that, turn it into a process and a system like you have, right? And hey, this is my goal. From there, I can develop with the help of maybe something I've read or seen or guys that I've spoken to, the processes A to Z to get there. But I think there's also a level 2, and it feels a little bit more like chance to some degree. But I think I sort of fall in the other category, but still very similar. I had the end in mind. Maybe I didn't develop quite the same process, but I think as long as you have that goal in mind, there's a certain level of like your mind, your subconscious kind of takes over it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
The more you think about it, some people talk about it being manifesting, whatever, but the more you have that thing in mind, the more it is affecting your day-to-day decisions,
Yes.
right? And sometimes it's conscious and you're like, wait a minute, this is not going to be the best play for me to get from A to Z. And sometimes it's just, it's there in the back of your mind and kind of pushes you in the right direction. And so I think a lot of people will sometimes not see the work you've put in or the dedication to that goal that maybe, that we both put in, and we hear this must be nice comment, and that's something too. I just want everyone to hear out there. It's not pure luck. I mean, you had, certainly born extremely intelligent, the smartest lawyer I know, and not just from like the legal standpoint, like how to handle the client, operate in public, market your firm. You said something in a podcast recently with Matt Austin on there, and it kind of surprised me. You said I came up and you were like, Jeff kind of built it from nothing, and I mean to some extent that's true, but everybody's had a mentor, and you were mine, and so you kind of kept me focused on the goal. You also served as a model to kind of follow. So I hope people at least get out of this that it wasn't handed to you, right? And I know outside of even just that first book, I felt like you were always telling me about not just books, but also other attorneys. Like, didn't you kind of look into some other guys' practices that are outside the state of Louisiana that you focused on?
Absolutely. And that's one of the blessings of practicing law in 2026 is that technology's made it easy for us to connect with people. Yeah. So I do that online. There's online groups, and I have friends. One of my mentors is in Kingston, New York, and he's a fantastic medical malpractice and catastrophic injury attorney. And he's kept me, above where I'd be for many, many years.
You found him in a group like this, or you sought him out directly?
Well, you know what? I discovered him online through a group we were both in, and I asked him, as my friend Ernie the attorney, who Ernie Svensson, needed a keynote speaker for an event he was hosting in New Orleans. Knew I knew this guy, so I asked him a favor to do a favor for my friend's favor. So I said, hey, he came down, and we went from being online friends to real life friends.
Cool.
And then he's got a group called the Mastermind Experience, which is fantastic. It's available to lawyers of all types. And we as a group meet quarterly. Now, I don't go every time. I'm lucky to go once a year.
Yeah.
But once you're in, you're in. And so, for example, the last time I went was really sweet. It was in Sicily.
Oh, nice.
They usually do some really fun destinations in Europe. They just did one in Puerto Rico a few weeks ago.
Cool.
But they do them here stateside too. So I've been to New York and other places. But yeah, we reach out for mentors in all directions. Going back to what you're saying about it being kind of earned or it must be nice. I mean, we're all blessed. I mean, being born in America is such an incredible blessing.
Head start.
Jump Street.
Yeah.
And so, I always tell people any faults I have are my own, because I was blessed with these fantastic parents in Eddie and Celeste Layrisson, who were highly educated, highly intelligent, and just great people, My dad, who was probably the consensus best sheriff of all time around here, is not bragging if it's true and if it's him, but he's a much better father than he was sheriff, And so, they cared about us. So that's God's grace giving us this fantastic start, but it comes with limits, right? And it's like as great as they weren't wealthy. I know your parents weren't wealthy either. They did everything they could for us.
Yeah.
But then there came a point where it was like, well, if you want to handle $1 million case, you might have to put hundreds of thousands of dollars in it. And that means risks and lines of credit.
Oh, yeah.
And my parents were there for me. I mean, we joke at my firm. I brought my mom to our law firm Christmas party. And I'm like, this is the OG of the firm. We're here paying on our credit card today because mom gave us a credit card when the firm started because she could get a $25,000 limit and I couldn't in my 20s or whatever. So,
necessary in that area of practice for sure.
But we kind of have to be at peace with, being grateful for, first and foremost, God's grace, because all the glory goes to him. And then what our parents gave us, and then just good luck. I mean, I look at things like what has been, and whether you want to call it luck or grace or whatever, but not for Brandy Bruno walking up to me at the Strawberry Festival when I'm working the Rotary booth. I mean, what a better break can you get in life than that?
Yeah.
But I still had to go close the deal.
I
still had to pick a good restaurant for that first date and make it work. And so business is not unlike that. You know? So, we've been blessed with plenty failures to go with our wins, and with each of them, hopefully comes a lesson and some wisdom. But for me, in terms of how do I handle that conversation, one, I probably haven't been getting it as long as you. I just moved into the nice neighborhood with the big houses, a few years ago. You were there for many years ahead of me. But I think you just have to be comfortable with where you're at in your gut. That, the part of earning this I've earned, but let's not get ahead of ourselves and act like it was all me. Because it wasn't, and it probably wasn't even mostly me.
Yeah. But I do think you said something else there too, like, trusting your gut, and whether that means just committing to something or taking a risk. And I mean, in your, professional life, at least, I sort of feel like I've seen it in two areas. One is almost in the negative. Like, you were certainly, you could call it, groomed into a position family-wise to have gone into politics. And you've been, I say smart not to, having done it before and knowing I'll never go back, like, to see the success that you've got now. That was a risk and the alternative. I think most people would have jumped at that chance because they say, hey, I'm being asked or I'm being questioned or put forth there. There's something I have to contribute or whatever it might be. I think that was a risk that some people maybe don't know about, and a lot of people probably question. And so I kind of wanted to touch, I guess, on that too. You trusted your gut not to do it. I know you haven't regretted it.
Right.
But I wanted to make sure, like, have you regretted it?
No, I think the challenge for me is to find a way to contribute to the community in other ways.
Yeah.
Because I'm so grateful that people like my dad and my brother Bree stepped up, and you, to run for office and do those hard things. Because I know, having watched my dad and Bree, they've won 12 straight elections. I know
that's crazy.
We don't claim to be the preeminent political family. We don't consider ourselves really that political, because it basically came down to Dad had this one job he wanted, sheriff. He was great at it.
Yeah.
And they're required to run every so often. And with Bree, kind of something similar at the chief of police level. But circling back to me, like, it's kind of like growing up, you kind of hopefully become self-aware about what you got and you don't got in your gut and your heart and your talent. And it's like, Bree was built to go charging in when he was young, tearing down doors on, drug houses and busting narcotics. And he and my dad are a run toward the gunshots kind of guys. I'm not. I was like, Dad, you mentioned I'm the book-wearing nurse. So I was like, what can I do? And for a while, I thought I'd go into politics. I thought maybe I'd run for district attorney or something like that. But, I was called on another path. And you're right, I've never regretted it. But, for me, the hope is not to just hide out in the private sector, make a bunch of money, help people individually, but on a one-on-one basis, but to extend that to, if not public service, community service. So I've been trying to give back, both through things like my mom did, volunteering in the nonprofit community.
But you get the bikes.
Like my dad did. The bikes for kids and such. But also, doing things like teaching at LSU Law School, volunteering on their board of trustees, serving on the Louisiana State Law Institute. Things that might suit my skills better than Bree's. In the same way.
But something not in the limelight. I mean, the fact that you're teaching at LSU or on the Law Institute are things that, maybe you've run a post about on social media, but most people don't think of. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know another guy that does those things, or that had, federal clerkships and things of that nature. And to have the fortitude to some degree to sit back and say, I'm going to run the practice that I want, that I have a goal of running in the town I grew up in. I think a lot of guys get caught up in, finishing the top of their class, and I'm good enough to teach at LSU, and I'm doing all these things. I've got to go work at a big firm or work in the city or put myself on a billboard or whatever. And I think, there's a lot I learned from you coming up, but those are the things that I've continued to learn from you, I guess. Like, your quality of life that you have focused on is a big one as of late. It's helped me probably in the last 6 months, to leave my house on a late day and see you, exercise in a neighborhood, or if I get home early on a certain day, to see you making the regular trip into St. Joe to pick your boys up, it kind of like strikes me as like, wow, I've done this 20 years. And if I'm not going to do this now, then when? And I think too, that's something that I hope.
I know you're a carpool dad too, and you have a much longer commute.
Yeah, I mean, I do.
So kudos to you for taking the time to do that.
But I think I hope, guys, too, that, we're starting out, see the things, hear the book you read and the focus you had on the goal. But even the guys that have done what they do for 20 years now that are starting to get burnt out, it's not too late, right? You didn't wake up, open an office, and start taking time off.
No, of course not. I mean, when I started my practice, I had no help at all, you know, other than volunteers. My
Yeah.
friends, Will and Angelique Richardson.
Yeah.
Will's my lifelong best friend. They're the godparents to my oldest son. They volunteered. I paid them in pizza every week. And here's two Tulane
At Fleur de Lis over in Baton Rouge,
exactly.
which is coming back, thankfully.
Yeah, Florida. They got a great story. When we have more time, we can tell you about how the late coroner of Baton Rouge, Dr. Hippolyte Landry, hit on Angelique, who was then Will's girlfriend, not yet wife.
Yeah.
And we love laughing about that. But you know, see, you deal with what you've got. And for me, it was great and generous parents and great and generous friends. And I remember answering the phone. I was renting on a handshake month-to-month lease with Andrew Edwards, a very inexpensive rent at his old building in Ponchatoula. And we had a phone, and we didn't even have caller ID, much less a receptionist. So I was
Just
picking
answering
the call
blind.
up blind. It might be a mad client. It might be, you know, a telemarketer.
Salesman.
Yeah, so, you know, you start wherever you can. But yeah, in that era, it was working till 10 o'clock every night. It was,
That's right.
you know, you're doing what needed. And sadly, 20 plus years later, my current assistant, my current associates, they didn't see that stage in practice.
Sure.
So they have to take my word for it.
Yeah.
Some did. I actually have a couple of my original employees, my second and third employees. Well, you know, 2 years
They were there
or
for
so
some of that, yeah.
So they didn't see the first 2 years, but they saw the you know, second through fifth maybe. But yeah, you grind when you got to grind, and look, I've made plenty of mistakes. And when you talked about the coming from federal clerkships and high grades, and I was blessed to be top of my class and clerk for these fantastic federal judges, and they were just heroes of mine. And for a while, I was just doing the kind of lemming thing, because that's one thing I think the law is pretty bad about. Even the smartest people in the class are kind of a prisoner of their performance. And it's like, if you do great, if you make law review, you better go to
This is where you got to go.
big firms with these high intro salaries that put golden handcuffs on you.
Yeah.
And if you're blessed to be in kind of the 1% of the 1% and get a federal clerkship, you better do that. And parts of it are perfect as a way to start any career. And by that, I mean the clerkship. The big firm experience, look, it works for some. My brother Louis is kicking butt.
I mean, yeah, that's a big firm.
He's one of the top lawyers in the country, bar none. His firm charges up to $2,000 an hour, and they're worth every penny.
Lord.
When you're in that kind of jam.
Yeah.
They're serving, you know, Exxon, not Ponchatoula guy like Parker. But for me, and this is where God's plan is so much better than your plan or my plan, because I was probably going to go down that path. And then my dad got sick and nearly died. I mean, 10 days before the bar exam, I'm studying in the Tulane Law Library with our mutual good friend, Joe Levine, my best pal in law school. And I get a call, and there are tears and crying on the other side, and I can barely tell. It's one of my best friends who worked at the sheriff's office, Steve Parra. Shout out to you if you're watching. But he can barely get through it, and he says, "You got to get up here." And I'm like, "What?" And he's telling me that my dad is getting CPR at that moment. It doesn't look like he's going to make it.
Jesus.
Turns out they had to do CPR 2 or 3 times. He turned blue, a whole thing. Well, hey, guys, Dad's 84, and I spent this morning with him having coffee.
Yeah.
He's doing great.
It's working out.
But at the time, we didn't know. And so priorities shift. And I'm like, you know what? And again, beginning with the end in mind, I don't know where life's going to take me. But at that point, I'm like, I want to be able to look back and be like the guy who was there for my parents.
Yeah.
They were sick and, you know, moving into the next stage of life. So I moved home. And then I just had to figure it out. And I didn't know I'd be here with you.
Sure.
I didn't know whether I'd be doing injury work or title work or whatever.
Yeah.
I just knew I wanted to be in Ponchatoula with my parents. And that took some things away from me opportunity-wise, and I'm so glad it did, because I don't know if I'd have had the strength to walk away from big money and come home without a big event like that.
Yeah. I still think, though, you know, we all have those events in life, and I think that a lot of people don't trust, I guess, their gut or what's going on in their life. I mean, some people might look at it as like a sign, but I think that, you know, what you've done well is still trust your instinct. And I think that there's a side of that people fear. I'm going to make this decision. I'm going to trust my gut. And if it goes wrong, I'm going to hate myself for it, kind of thing. And I just have never had that experience, or very, very limited. There might be a few times I'm like, that was a mistake, kind of thing. But there's been a few times in my career, my life in general, where I just like, you know, trusted my gut on it, and then left that scenario and been like, man, was I way, way off. I mean, everybody's going to have a few, I guess, but I don't know.
Yeah, but
I
for
hope
you,
guys
it seems
do
like
it.
it's been very few because the big bets have all paid off that I've witnessed in your career. I mean,
Well, you just don't dwell on the other, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But then while they may seem big in the moment, when you look back, they're bumps,
Yeah.
not mountains. You know?
Yeah, I was reading something the other day, and they were saying that your emotions, like when something bad happens to you, last for 90 seconds, and if your feelings go beyond that, then that's you dwelling on it. And so maybe it's just a part of my personality that I was just genetically blessed with, that I can move beyond it. And maybe some people can't as easily, I guess. But I guess what I'm getting at is, like, if that's a tough thing for whoever's watching, like, try to stick with it, because there's always some other opportunity around the bend.
Yeah.
And, I just don't think that you can ever trust your gut and regret it. Whereas if you go against it, like, that one's the one that hurts because you knew better. Right. And that's the one that, like, you hear about and you'll tell yourself, like, you knew better than that. Why'd you make that decision? So, I find it interesting that as intelligent as you are, as process driven as you are, and all those things, it's like there's still so much of your career that's been based on your gut. Chasing the Strawberry Festival queen, staying in Ponchatoula, and now too, you've got a lifestyle that, again, I don't know anybody else in any walk of life. You spend some time every year, in Washington this year, sometimes in Carmel.
Yeah,
right?
Carmel is our place.
But to see the time you're spending with your kids is just, huge. And I'm sure nothing you're ever going to regret.
Well, I hope not. The thing is, I'm one of 4 boys, as you know, and the last of the 4 boys to have children. So when you watch most of your friends and all of your brothers have children, it's it's going to go quick. So my boys just had birthdays a few weeks ago, and they're roughly halfway through childhood and nearly out the house, it seems. And so when you're coming to fatherhood later in life, you realize, hey, that's going to go quick. So I want to be there. And we've just tried to design our firm in a way that supports that. And for entrepreneurs that may want to do something similar and scale back from that work until 10 o'clock every night type 7-day-a-week thing that we've all done, know that it's possible, because my firm's living proof. But you've got to get the right people on the bus, and you've got to invest in them. And to have it work and work a long time, you have to realize that it has to be a great deal for them too. Yeah,
and but I still think
that can be expensive.
It sort of started with that goal, like, this is what I want to do, and you built, in front of that, like, this is what it needs to look at, whether it's the team or the process or what have you. Man, we're running short on time. I got to start extending these times here. I could talk to you for hours about this, because we don't get to catch up enough.
It's been 5 minutes.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you coming on. Congrats, not just on your success, which we all knew even in high school and grade school that would come, but just your success and the way you've handled life. I mean, there are a few people that I look at and be like, man, this is something I could do better to have that kind of lifestyle, but you're one of those guys. So you keep me on my toes and keep me focused and driven. I hope everyone, I know they have gotten us something out of, if not just learning about you a little bit more, but
can I jump in real quick? I don't want to jam your outro here, but I want to say thank you and just flip that script back on you and let you know that you inspire me in so many ways. I mean, you've given me all these flowers throughout this interview, but I look at how you've grown this business, which is much bigger and more successful than mine. I see how you've managed your team, how you've held your own family. I mean, you and Martha were an example to me on how to be husband and wife long before I became a husband. And I just really admire the way you're doing it. And you described me as a mentor earlier, and it's a real honor in my life for you to feel that way. But it's a 2-way street, and I want to thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that. But again, we'll have you again on in the future, because I still think there's so many things to touch on. You just articulate too, so I think a lot of people can get things out of what you've built and how you've done it. So we'll have you back, man. I appreciate it.
Next time we talk about the many mistakes I've made and how to avoid them.
All right, we'll go there for a little bit. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
And then I know one time you ask about.
Yeah. Okay? So who you got?
So I was thinking, because so often you're talking about overcoming hardship here and not quitting. Jeff Petkovich, with the United by Barbecue, was one of my favorite interviews I ever did. He and Bree tag team this event that Jeff's a grandmaster barbecue guy, and also just all around great guy. But he got Bree involved in this ministry essentially that feeds people in emergencies, be it hurricanes or whatever disaster.
Yeah.
He's got a fantastic life story.
Okay.
And that's an example of a guy who coulda, shoulda, woulda quit and didn't, and it's powerful.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll definitely get him on then. This is ending this first season, but I'll have him for the next season for sure.
Jeff's name, very hard to say, very hard to spell. It makes Les Shapiro look like Jones.
Yeah.
But it's a good story.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it. Again, thank you.
brother.
Take care. That's it for today's episode of No Quit. If you're still showing up, still building, still fighting, I see you. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and join me for more behind-the-scenes lessons on what it takes to keep going when most people would walk away. And remember, success isn't about getting it perfect. It's about not giving up.